All right, everyone, we're at the bottom of the hour. Hello and welcome. This session is being recorded. My name is Jennifer Robinson, and I will be the moderator for this ADEIL session. Before we begin, and on behalf of ADEIL, we would like to thank our generous sponsor, Noodle, and our host, Old Dominion University. We are thankful for their contributions in making this event possible. We are going to be, well, we meaning I, will be randomly selecting winners during this conference presentation. The winner will be announced during the session. I'll announce it in the chat. If your name is in there, please tell me your email address so we can reach out and contact you. Thank you for joining us for the use of podcasting technology to enhance the online learning experience. I know I'm very interested in this, and I would like to welcome Drs. Joe Cappa and Margareta Knopik. The floor is yours.
Well, hello, everybody. Good morning or afternoon, depending on what time zone you're in. My name is Dr. Joe Cappa. I am a project manager and an associate faculty at the University of Arizona Global Campus. I am delighted to be here with you all today and excited to share with you the findings from our research on podcasting. I'll pass it now to my colleague, Dr. Margareta Knopik.
Hi, it is so nice to be here today. Up until this past June, I was a full-time lead faculty with Colorado Technical University. As Joe indicated, we worked together for a number of years. In June, I stepped back as adjunct so I could focus specifically on courses, and feels like I'm busier than ever. But what we did, the reason that we we thought we would share this with you is in 2021, like most of you, our online students were feeling a great deal of stress from COVID, and whatever their circumstances were, we just felt that they needed to be more connected to us. And Dr. Cappa came to me and made the suggestion about exploring podcasting as a way to maybe make those connections. So we created a little work group and began exploring the research, and then that led to creating kind of a how-to sheet based on the research on how to create podcasting, and then we kind of went from there. So some of the things that we discovered is that podcasting can be used very effectively in a learning environment. And I think we were kind of surprised at how flexible podcasting, either audio or video podcasting, can be within the environment.
So one of the things that I have done both at my time at Colorado Tech and as I've been thinking here for University of Arizona Global Campus and how to bring this in is we looked at how you can incorporate podcasting, not so much to repeat what the students read in their weekly assignments, but to bring the course topics in from a different perspective and to connect those back to the assignments and the learning outcomes. A brief overview of what we're going to talk about here today. When we get to the current and future states in the discussion, that's where we're going to bring in the discussion around how the future of AI and podcasting can join together to further enhance student learning. So the purpose of our research today, we wanted to examine this podcasting technology tool as a way to support the online learning experience. We wanted to examine how students use podcasting to support their online learning experience. And then lastly, how faculty can use podcasting to connect educational practices and principles within the online learning experience and to feel as if they are bringing a tool that does more than just give students something else to have to chase down. It's more something that really connects that educational experience, if you will. So we had 3 research questions that we looked at. How does podcasting technology support open access to open access? How are podcasts used for teaching and learning in higher education? And then lastly, as Dr. Knopik alluded to, how can podcasting facilitate more flexible and mobile learning? So I'm going to pass to Dr. Knopik to let her talk about open access.
Okay, so one of our very initial challenges after we had done a lit review and begun experimenting with a way to, a structured way to approach this. One of our very early challenges was finding a platform that would give us not the faculty access to experiment. And the one we found was Anchor. It is connected to Spotify. It's free. You don't have to have a Spotify paid account in order to access Anchor, which made this really great. But from an administrative perspective, from my perspective, Anchor was wonderful because it also provided data, how many people accessed the podcast and their demographics. It was amazing. But what really surprised us once we began using putting podcasts out there with respect to open access was how many non-CTU affiliated people were accessing the podcasts. There are some of our podcasts have had thousands of hits. So open access is a thing, and Anchor really worked really well for us. From the video perspective, we aren't quite as far along. Colorado Tech requires a 1-hour recorded live chat every week. What many of us have started to do, though, is to build and integrate videos, short videos, into our courses that use the YouTube platform. And of course, YouTube is also a well-known open access.
So what we did for this particular set of research, different from what we did last time, is we wanted to go out and look at what does the data tell us in terms of where podcasts are at. And certainly we all know, if you have Apple, or if you have at the Apple iTunes store, or if you have Spotify, there are podcasts everywhere, right? So we wanted to see what this growth looked like and what the current usage is versus projected. And as you can see here, the growth, it's only projected to continue to grow. And if you look at the other genres category, and if we put education in that category, you can see the growth from now to 2032 will consistently go in an upward pattern. So we believe that podcasting will only get more popular, more sophisticated, if you will. And as Dr. Knopik said, as more user-friendly platforms come on that are both free and paid, it will only support this growth. So very positive here about where podcasting can go. I'm going to let Dr. Knopik talk to this next slide because she brought it in, and I think it really hammers home how our population, how our students can benefit from podcasting.
Right. So again, I'm not sure whether our demographics are similar to yours, to your online students. We are specifically speaking or working with an online population, but our demographics.
I think she froze. I think Dr. Knopik froze up there. While we're waiting for her to come back, I will talk through. You can see these two slides here. The first one shows across the educational age groups who uses who will use podcasting, and you can see that the demographic where there is at least some to an additional amount of college, you can see the podcasting usage goes up. And then on this other screen, you can see here where the reasons why learners will use podcasting. And you can see here, or I should say people rather, not learners. If you look at the to learn category, you can see there is usage in the demographic areas for students who tend to go to online learning institutions. So these two graphs here, we are encouraged rather by these two graphs here, as they show or rather support the idea for continuing to develop the podcasting tool for higher ed. We also looked at two different types of podcasting, as Dr. Knopik pointed out. My experience has been, oh, there she is. Dr. Knopik, are you back?
Yes.
There you go. Okay, I stole your thunder on the demographics,
Nope.
but I'm going to
No
pass
problem.
the audio video to you.
Okay, well, Dr. Cappa and one or two of our other adjunct faculty really embraced the audio podcasting. Some of us elected to focus on the video side of podcasting, and but from the audio side, it is extremely accessible. It is cost effective. It reaches a wide audience, as we could see from our anchor demographics. Incredibly versatile, and because of course you're speaking to a student right into their ears, it's intimate. And we also have discovered most recently that AI provides a potential for even further personalization. Those of us who focused on the video side really kind of worked on structuring our videos so that students could listen to them while they were maybe driving or doing something else. So we had to be very, very purposeful when we presented our videos, but we also needed to make them very visually appealing and engaging for those students who were sitting in front of us. But the video benefits for those of you who can do it really well and who are maybe working on a contract basis, video podcasting can be across social media and optimization and across various platforms. So we just wanted to make sure that y'all knew that we had kind of done both.
So as we were continuing along with this research, and as we looked at how podcasting is used, or the benefits of podcasting rather in education, I want to focus on the third bullet point here down at the bottom. We spent time at Colorado Tech making sure that it was not the podcasts that we did, whether they were audio or video, were not, as I had alluded to before, were not just a repeat of what the student could either read in the assignment or they could participate in one of the live chat sessions, whether they came required or whether they listened on their own time. So we really thought about how do we make this a digital learning tool, as you see the citation down there. And we landed on taking the assignment concepts and going out and looking for where you could connect these assignment concepts to real world events that were happening, and then give students the ability to say, okay, well, this is what I'm reading about, this is what I'm researching about, and then here is how I can make that real world connection. So we spent a considerable amount of time making sure that we were giving students a reason, if you will, to add a podcasting tool into the rest of their resource materials. The other thing that we learned is, as we all know, students have limited amounts of time, so they will prioritize, right? So if you said to them, hey, look, I have to read 50 pages, I have to read 3 articles, I have to listen to your lecture, and then, oh, by the way, you want me to do this podcast thing. So we made sure that we position this as another tool for them with, here are the benefits you can gain. And as Dr. Knopik mentioned, you can listen, it's portable, you can listen to it at any time, you could take it down off Anchor platform. We made sure they could listen to it on their mobile device or their computer and so on. But we really structured it around, this is a learning tool for you. Dr. Knopik, I'm gonna, oh, sorry.
Okay, yeah, just leave it on this slide. But what I was going to say is that for many online schools, curriculum is developed by subject matter experts. And so the challenge, obviously, for faculty is to bring in current information, and podcasting and video use really helps us do that, because we can pull something from the headlines that just happen to work for that week and pop it into a podcast. So it allows students to stay current in a very structured curricular environment. We did, at the very beginning, we did find, this slide really illustrates how flexible and versatile podcasting is. And as Dr. Cappa indicated, we didn't want to substitute information, but we also didn't have, as faculty, we didn't have the flexibility to use podcasting, hand it over to the students and let them develop podcasts or videos. We don't have that flexibility just within our environment. But the supplementary information fit perfectly for us, so that we were able to pull out pieces of the curriculum that we knew students consistently had problems with, or we could bring in examples, like I said, from the headlines for that day. So again, it's just a fabulous tool for a wide variety of things.
So I will add just a quick to this. What I was able to do is, I would say during my live chat sessions, I would allude to some of the course concepts. I would allude to and say, in the recorded podcast, I expand on this concept, and I'm bringing in a live connection, whether it was something happening internationally or domestically. And I would say to them, if you want to hear more of that, please go listen. And we'll talk about this coming up, but our podcasts were short. They were no more than 15 minutes.
Right.
And they were structured, as Dr. Knopik said, but we wanted to keep them from a supplementary standpoint. We didn't want to make students feel like I have to go listen to a whole nother full lecture. So we kept our podcast short, like I said, 15 minutes.
And along that same line with videos, outside of the live chat, we have created very short, less than 2-minute long YouTubes that speak to a specific skill. And then we send that to all of the students, and they can access it with a link if they feel like it. Things like how to manage your time, or how do one benefit of the library. Just little things that we feel as faculty, our potential cohort that we're working with can use.
So we talked about benefits here, and more so perceptions. One of the things that was interesting to me is I would often have students either in a discussion posting or in one of their papers at the very end say, and in the podcast, I learned X. And I went, wow, that was insightful to me. So I had students who said, I need that short burst of knowledge. Your podcast helped me for my particular learning style. Or I had students who say, I'll listen to these on the train on the way to work. I can't necessarily access my book to read it, but I can listen to these. So right? We made sure that the podcasts were not connected to the learning management system so that students didn't feel like they had to log in. We made sure they were flexible, portable, separate, again, so that with the Anchor platform, as Dr. Knopik said, if you had Spotify or if you didn't, you could put it into your iPod or your headphones, and you could listen to it. And we also made sure that they weren't specific to a particular week in the course, so that students didn't feel like, "Oh, I missed that podcast, therefore I missed that opportunity." We made sure that there was, as it says down here in the second bullet point, we really tried to give the control of these podcasts back to the students. The only thing that we didn't do is we didn't put them, we tried not to put them in the first week of the course as there is so much else going on. We tried to structure them in the remaining 4 weeks of the course. These were 5-week sessions where
And
we
likewise with the little video blurbs with YouTube. For example, I just sent the how to manage time video, and it is astonishing. And we're in the beginning of the 3rd week of the session, and so by now the students are figuring out that they need to manage their time. And I teach in an introductory master's course. So it is astonishing how many students respond to that. How did you know that I'm struggling? Or this just was perfect for me right now. So Dr. Cappa said they are listening to this material.
So one of the things that we would, and you can, I will speak to the second bullet point here. One of the things that would be a future forward goal for us is to figure out how to get more learner, more student, I won't say the word cooperation there, but more student buy-in to say, how can you help us design these podcasts? So we designed them with what we thought they wanted, but the next phase for us would be is to say, how can you help us design these? What do you want to see? We talked about bringing in a student as a guest participant. We talked about, as Dr. Knopik said, letting students try to record some part of the session themselves. Things that you can see here from the research that we want to even increase the flexibility of podcasts moving forward. And as I had said when we started, when we get to the slides on AI towards the end of our presentation, pretty exciting stuff about how AI could bring in and help us with that evolving our podcasts. So one of the other things too that we try to do with these podcasts is we try to introduce students to the concept of storytelling. And we tried to get them, the podcasts that I did were at a master's level courses, and to get them into understanding the concept of storytelling. And one of the things that I would say to them is, if you can tell a good story, you can translate that into writing a paper. If you can tell a coherent story with a beginning, middle, and end, you can translate that into writing a paper using critical thinking skills to address the assignment material. Also, if you are somebody who, as it says in the second bullet there, if you're somebody who benefits from storytelling, podcasts can help you personalize your course experience because you can focus on that storytelling aspect. And again, that wasn't something we thought about. I think we talked about it, but it came about after our podcasts were implemented, after they took off. Dr. Knopik, anything to add on that?
Well, no.
So this piece here really is the kind of the nuts and bolts of the faculty piece. So for me, as Dr. Knopik said, I'm an adjunct faculty. And so for me to take this on, it was something that I wanted to do, but something as we were doing it, I realized how much time it took. And so we made sure that we focused more on the learning and less on the technology. So we looked at multiple different platforms. We looked at subscriptions. We looked at all kinds of stuff. And then we said, well, gee, let's find something that is easy, that doesn't make the technology the star of the show and makes the learning the star of the show. And that's why we went to the Anchor platform, because we could just go through, record the podcast, easily send them over to students. And it wasn't this where the technology really gummed up the system, if you will. We also, for some of our, and I would hear from students, they would say, gee, I listen to podcasts all the time. I would rather do this podcast than your live experience, because I have it right on my phone, and I do it when I'm at the gym, or I do it when I'm grocery shopping. So we heard from students to say some of them, that type of media really fit with how they wanted to learn. So it was an interesting experience for me, and continues to be an interesting experience around not letting the technology overtake the learning experience or the learning process, if you will.
And from an administrative perspective, and along that same line, what we tried to do was also make it as friendly as and easy as possible for the faculty. So we developed, honestly, a how-to sheet. You start with this, and we provided examples, and it's just a one-page sheet that faculty can follow. And one of our success stories is one of my adjunct faculties is like 85 years old, and she just embraced this like no other, and continually adds to her podcast library. So by removing the fear and the technology issues, by finding an easy platform, and by providing a recipe card for actually walking through and creating, our faculty were able to focus on content and structuring and telling their story.
So from the student perspective, we hoped, or initially we hoped, that students would take these podcasts and go, oh, these are great. And they would listen to them right out of the gate. Well, and that wasn't the case, at least for me. For me, it was a slower adoption. One of the things that we talked about initially was, do we make these podcasts part of an assignment? Do we make the students listen to the podcast and then include it into the papers, as I said? And we backed off from that. And it goes down to this last bullet point here. We wanted to give them something, another way to look at this, the course, the assignments, the material, to try to expand their critical thinking. And so to say to them, so this podcast is on the topic of strategy. And oh, by the way, we're going to talk about how several companies during the pandemic are doing X, Y, and Z. And while it's not directly related to that specific tiny little course learning objective, if you broaden your thinking, if you put some critical thinking to it, you can go back and make the connection. And as we socialize that out, and as we continue to share that with students, I saw that the amount of students start to increase who would listen to the podcast. And some of them would say, this helped me think about this topic in the course a little bit differently. So it's a slower process, but I do think we can help students improve critical thinking just by giving them that short podcast to listen to, and by giving them just a little bit and having them try to fill in the rest, if you will, from a knowledge perspective.
Well, and we also hope that eventually they'll make connections even between courses. So if they get into the next course and say, oh, I think I heard about that, then they have a way to get back and review it.
So as Dr. Knopik said, she gave me the ability to run this, to kind of be the adjunct faculty lead for this project. One of the things that we put this out there, and we thought we were going to get a lot of people who wanted to do this, and we got about 5.
Yeah.
Most of the people came back and said, this technology thing is an impediment. And I think this technology thing is going to take away from what we're trying to do. So you see the first bullet here, it's shifting that thinking, that it's not the technology tool, It's how do we incorporate it as part of pedagogy? And how do we bring the podcast in just as you would another learning resource? So as I was saying to you guys, we got down to about 5 to 6 people who said, I'm willing to pilot this. But we did get that resistance to, we even had some faculty say, we want students to spend less time on their phones because they won't come to my live chat. And well, okay, well, good luck with that. But the other one here is the authenticity part, right? The second bullet here is that the 5 or 6 folks that did the podcast with, I worked with over time, and we all shared a similar view on this authenticity. But there are some faculty that we ran into, or in our when we were doing this initial discussion, who said, this is not my first school. I have 5 schools that I teach for. I don't really want to spend that much time on one particular course, if you will. So it's helping them to understand that, to get past that barrier of, it's going to take me all this extra time to authentically connect, because once you do, the class feel is completely different. And at least, again, that was my experience.
What I heard.
So one student thing that we ran into that we weren't necessarily didn't really think that this would happen is, as much as I want to believe that my students are so technically savvy that they can do all of this stuff, one thing they would say to me is, I'm technically overloaded. I have a live chat. I have to go to an online bookstore. I have to go to an online library. I have to go here. And oh, by the way, the school sends me 20 emails a day from various things. And then, oh, by the way, you want me to go and then do this podcast thing. At some point they go, I'm overwhelmed and I can't, I'm overloaded. So what we tried to do was to put this in a course announcement and just say, just read this announcement. Just read this announcement at the beginning of the week. And you don't have to go anywhere else if you don't want to. Or what we would do is we would put it as an extra discussion post and say, just read, when you do your normal discussion post, just take a look at this one. But it is something that, as podcasting continues to evolve, is to try to help students not be as technically overloaded, so that they even will consider using a podcast. And I think that is why it took us almost half a year to get, to Dr. Knopik's point, to get the students to start going and listening to the podcasts. The other thing here is we were lucky we were given the approval by the university to do this. Some of the research that I looked at, that is not often always the case. And so sometimes faculty are on their own trying to do this. And one of the things that the research suggests is that the more the institution, the more the faculty, the more they feel like they've got that buy-in and support, the more they can go out and be willing to do and create these podcasts. From a course perspective, or from a learning perspective, very little research. One of the things I will say is, and I didn't put it here, but there was a gap in the research, meaning a lot of research stopped at 2011 and then didn't pick up back again until like 2017. So there was this gap where podcasting, as Dr. Knopik alluded to, when the iPhone, when the iPods, when all that were out, everything was really hot, and then it fizzled off. And now I believe with AI and with kind of things, the digital era, if you will, ramping up again, I think you'll start to see more research. But this kind of said it all to me. There has been very little on the connection between listening to a podcast and trying to connect it to learning. So I put this in here to show you, to demonstrate that there is a lot more out there that can be done to impact the literature. So I'm going to turn it over now to Dr. Knopik to talk about the AI piece. We were talking about this last night. I think she's chomping at the bit to share this all with you.
I, AI blew onto the scene, as y'all know, a year ago, and I think we're all trying to come to grips with its potential. And Dr. Cappa found this fabulous article that is very current and speaks directly to how we can maybe use AI to develop and produce podcasts. Honestly, I haven't had a chance to really practice with it with respect to podcasting, but I will say Chat GPT is a really, really, really fun program, and I look forward to really being able to dig into this. Joe, I'm sorry, I don't know what else.
One of the things that this article talked about here is that by using the AI, having the content creator and the listener use the AI, there will be this type of deeper connection between the two. It also talked about the ability here to, I won't say self-promote, but to get the podcast out there and let the AI actually do the promoting of the podcast for you. It also, back to what we talked about around the time commitment, using AI will drastically reduce pre-production, the recording, and the post-production and the editing. So that is something perhaps that, as it makes its way into the higher ed space, will make it even easier for both full-time and adjunct faculty to jump in more into the podcasting space.
Obviously, though, what we do need to make sure that we do with AI is not hand everything over to AI, because we all know that we have to validate the information that's provided. So in a sense, yes, it's going to make our jobs easier as we create podcasting, but we are going to have to focus really closely on the validity of the content.
So I like this article that I have in here as well, but this one also was a bit scary to me from this regard. As Dr. Knopik said, voice recognition and dialogue recognition, it talks about letting AI not necessarily take over, but a lot of your podcasting is letting AI step in and drive that voice recognition and the dialogue recognition. But it also talked about the dangers to that could be that AI takes over, or that somebody hacks into that AI, and the next thing you know, your podcast is going down a direction you didn't intend it to. What I did like here is the interactive podcasting here, where the listener actually becomes a participant during the podcast, not necessarily having to join you, but just through the use of the AI tool. And then the last thing here is the idea to use AI to personalize one podcast for multiple listeners. And I thought that was really cool. And I thought that was something that if you're in a course with 25 or 30 plus learners, giving you the ability to say, okay, this group of learners could use this group of learners could benefit from this, or even to say this group of learners who's struggling, how could I use this podcast to perhaps help them, as Dr. Knopik alluded to, with a topic of time management or writing skills or something. But the idea of where AI is going and where it could go for podcasting, I'm very excited to see how that develops. That is really all of the main material we had. I thought we would open it up to discussions with you all. And I put these two questions up here, but certainly we can discuss anything that we have presented here today.
We have about 5 minutes left, and I'm curious if we're thinking of doing podcasting for our courses, what might be the one or two things we need to think about now in order to make this launch in the next 6 months?
Okay, I think okay, so I think first of all, it depends on your curriculum structure. Are all of your economics classes, for example, pre-designed, or do your faculty individually create the content? I think that's the very first thing. Because obviously if it's a situation where all of your courses are designed the same, then you're going to need a little extra lead time if you want to make podcasts a formal part of your curriculum. I think you absolutely have to begin with pulling your faculty together. If you don't have your faculty on board with this, you're not going to have a good product. And if you have adjunct faculty that you're working with, that kind of becomes even more critical, because you just don't want a faculty member taking a podcast that they've done at another school and dumping it into your course, because your missions are going to be a little bit different, and the focus might be a little bit different. So you've got to get your faculty on board. You also, if it were me, I would recommend that you have a formalized process and training for your faculty, and give them time to structure their podcasts. You might want to review the content before they go live. We did not do that. Probably should have, but we didn't, and everything turned out fine. But to be able to build into your plan how you want to use podcasts. Do you want them to supplement your material? Do you want them to replace your material? What do you want? So it all depends.
I would echo that. And Jen, I would say the one thing that I learned is we put together, I think it was almost a 3-page operational document. Mm-hmm. I underestimated the value of that.
Yeah.
Until we gave it to our Dr. Westerhoff. She's 85 years old. We gave her this and she went, "This thing is great. I can create a podcast on my own." The only thing we really needed help with was navigating the Anchor platform. So I would echo what Dr. Knopik said. Is the operational piece, putting it together, then user acceptance testing it, and then testing it again, and then
And one of the reasons that we really needed the faculty to understand what was happening is that we asked that faculty consider creating a podcast near the end of the term that kind of hands the students over to their next course. What can they expect to see in their next class? Even if all of our students are going to different classes, there are some things that are really consistent. And so we wanted our faculty to understand that was happening. So it's just such a powerful strategic tool, but you've got to have your faculty on board.
About one more minute. Are there
any other questions?
All right. Well, thank you, Doctors Cappa and Knopik. We're so glad you were here. Thank everybody else. Thank you for attending. Please be sure to complete this conference evaluation. I'm going to put that link in here for you. You only need to fill out one for the entire conference. So if you still have more presentations you're attending, feel free to do this now or later. But thank you so much for joining us today. And please feel free to reach out to Dr. Knopik or Cappa if you have any
Absolutely.
questions
Will do.
after this presentation.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great day.